All right, let's just jump right in, because today we're tackling something, well, truly mind-bending. We're going to explore this really radical new framework for reality itself, all laid out in a paper called The Theory of Nothing, a new map of reality.
So right out of the gate, this theory hits you with a question that just completely flips everything you think you know on its head. It asks, what if reality? What if it isn't made of things at all? No particles, no fields, no strings, but something else, something entirely different.
There's this massive problem right at the heart of science, and they call it the two worlds problem. It's basically this. On one hand, you've got objective physics. That's the world out there, right? Particles, forces, all that stuff. But then you've got your subjective consciousness, your thoughts, feelings, everything that happens in here. And the billion-dollar question has always been, how do those two connect? Well, this theory suggests a pretty wild solution, and it does it by starting from a place you'd never expect.
So how in the world does it even try to bridge that gap? Well, it starts with the foundation that is, honestly, it's almost absurdly simple. The idea is to build all of reality from just one single rule. And that rule is consistency.
Okay, so what does that even mean, consistency? Well, in this theory, it's defined as the sole primitive of reality. That's it. The only things that are allowed to exist are structures that don't have any internal contradictions. And think about what that implies. It means we have to throw out all our usual starting assumptions. No space-time, no matter, no observers, none of it. You start with absolutely nothing except this one rule.
Now, this isn't just some vague philosophical idea. The authors argue that from this one incredibly powerful rule, a universal mathematical bedrock, it just has to emerge. And they call this bedrock sigma. You can kind of think of sigma as the fundamental language of reality, the set of all possible consistent structures. Everything, and I mean everything else, is going to be built from this.
All right, so we've got this mathematical bedrock, this sigma. Cool. But how do you get from a bunch of abstract math to, the actual feeling of being you? This is where it gets really wild. This is the first mind-blowing step, deriving subjective experience, consciousness itself, from nothing but pure structure.
So the key here, the secret sauce, is a concept called operational closure. And the best way to picture it is that classic image of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, right? It's a perfect symbol for a system that's completely self-referential, a closed loop. And the theory argues that when one of these mathematical structures inside sigma twists back on itself and forms a closed loop, something absolutely incredible happens.
And this is the crucial part. Consciousness, or what the theory calls interiority. It isn't some random fluke. It's not some ghost in the machine. The theory states that in these self-referential, closed-loop systems, interiority is a forced structural consequence. It's not optional. It has to emerge from the structure itself.
So, okay, what's this experience actually made of? Well, the theory breaks it down into three fundamental, totally non-physical parts. First up, you've got psi. That's kind of like the total presence, the whole field of an experience. Then there's phi, which is the process that creates a sense of me, a localized individual identity. And last, you have lambda, which is basically the frame rate or the clock speed of that experience. So psi, phi, and lambda, those are the basic building blocks of any subjective world.
All right, so now we have these individual pockets of consciousness just popping into existence from this mathematical bedrock. But that's a long way from a shared reality, right? How do we get from a bunch of individual experiences to a world of tables and chairs and planets that we all seem to agree on? Well, the next step is just as wild. We're going to see how this theory builds physics out of consciousness.
And this leads to what is, for me, one of the most powerful and just unforgettable lines in the whole thing. It completely flips how we think about physics. Here it is. Physics is compression under agreement. Okay, what on earth does that actually mean?
It means that the physical world, the one we all walk around in, it isn't the bottom layer of reality. Not at all. It's a consensus reality. It's just the most compressed, the most efficient, the most consistent way for all of these countless conscious systems to interact with each other. Things like space, time, and energy, they're just the shared language that pops out of this massive, ongoing agreement.
So what this does is give us this really clean separation, two different domains or realms, if you will. On one side, you have the E domain. That's the first-person world of experience, defined by those unitless things we talked about, psi, phi, and lambda. Then on the other side, you have the P domain. That's the third-person world of physics, with its familiar units of space, time, and energy. And they're deeply connected for sure, but they are not the same thing. One is the raw internal experience, and the other is just the shared external representation of it.
Okay, wow, we have covered a lot of ground here. So let's take a breath, pull back for a second, and look at the whole picture. Let's see this new map of reality that the theory is proposing, with all the pieces put together.
The whole thing flows in 3 pretty clean steps. Step 1, the foundation. You start with the rule of consistency, and that creates the universal mathematical law, sigma. Step 2, instantiation. Inside sigma, these self-referential closed loops form, and that forces consciousness to emerge. And then step 3, representation. The agreement between all those conscious systems is what creates the shared, compressed reality that we call physics. That's it. It's a complete pipeline, all the way from one single idea to the entire cosmos.
Now look, it's super important to be clear about what this theory is not trying to do. It's not claiming to derive the exact equations of quantum mechanics or general relativity, but more like it's trying to build the foundation they stand on. It's also got absolutely nothing to say about metaphysical stuff like reincarnation, and this is a big one, it does not reduce consciousness to just some simple computer program. Think of it this way. It's giving us a map of reality, not a detailed description of every single rock and tree.
But what this map does do is perform this really profound reversal of how we normally think about, well, everything. So instead of physical laws creating consistency, it says consistency creates the laws. Instead of existence being the starting point, it's actualization. Interiority, that inner experience, comes before observers. And even the simple act of one thing following another, that comes before our concept of time. It takes our whole understanding of what's fundamental and just flips it completely upside down.
And all of this leads to the theory's ultimate central claim, a claim that totally redefines what the universe is even made of. And the idea is this: reality is not made of things. It is made of closures that agree. Just think about that. It's suggesting that our universe, at its core, is just a giant network of these self-referential loops, all constantly talking to each other, all coming to a consensus about what is real.
And that brings us to the theory's final statement. It's powerful, and honestly, it's a little haunting. You ask the question, why is reality this way? Why this structure and not some other? And the theory gives no external reason. It just says that, built from the ground up on nothing but the logic of consistency, it simply could not have been any other way. It's the only possible structure that doesn't collapse under its own internal contradictions. It only cannot be otherwise.